Hey Abundant Seed family, how are you guys doing today? I am so happy, I am so grateful to be with you to have this episode of the Abundant Seed. And so I want us to have a discussion today. Now the discussion, we're going to talk about the marital garden. Now most of you understand the Bible and know what it says in Genesis chapter 2 verse 18. When the Lord God said it is not alone, it's not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. In another version it said, I will make a helper who is just right for him. And then it also says in another version, I will make him a helper comparable for him. So we know that first and foremost, God was the one who recognized that a man should not be alone. Now what is very, very important, Abundant Seed family, is that in Genesis chapter 2 as well, verse 23, it says that, and God took a rib, the rib that he took from Adam, he made a woman and he brought her to him. Now we all know that Adam and God used to meet in the garden. So we have some questions that I want you to answer today. Where was Adam? Where was Adam when God brought this woman to him? We know that Adam was in the garden. What was God doing? What the Lord God was doing? He was the father giver. So he brought the woman to Adam in the garden. Now, you see, the importance here is, where was Adam? He was in the garden. What was God to him? The father giver. We want to recognize as well that the fact that Adam was in the garden. Let me ask you another question. Where was the wedding? In the garden as well. So we know Adam was in the garden, waiting on his wife. The father giver, the Lord God came, presented the wife in the garden, and there was a wedding. And remember, it was said it was not good. This is where a man would leave his mother and father's home and cleave to his wife. But what did Adam say? Adam said, hey, this is flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. She shall be called woman. We know that they became one flesh. All these things happened in the garden. But let me ask another question. Was the garden always prepared? The garden wasn't always prepared, God looked at it and he saw that there was just a vast expanse of water. And God started to put things in place from the first day right down to the seventh day before he placed Adam in the garden. So I'm asking these questions because I want us to understand a few things. We are talking about marital garden here today. And so I want you to have the concept of your marriage being a garden. Yeah? So what am I saying? I'm saying this. You are in a marriage. It is important that certain things take place for the crops to grow well. So I'm now factoring or comparing your marriage to a garden that you have now. You have to decide what kind of garden you want. It could be a large garden where you need machinery, or you could have a small backyard garden. But the important thing is, whenever you start that garden may have had a sort of overgrown flowers and bushes. Just as when God saw the earth, it was just a black expanse of land. And then God had to prepare the land. So your marital garden, think about when you were courting, you didn't know the person, you were a lot of unknowns. And then you started to take the woman out, you started to ask certain questions, you started to date. That is cleaning and preparing the garden. And then for some reason realize that this thing could get serious. So you now started to get into premarital counseling. Now, not everybody will be going through premarital counseling, but you may start talking to some friends and neighbors and family about this woman or the man, you know. That is preparation of the garden. Then you get to the place where you start to, well, let me just to cut it short because I don't want to be too long. Let me say you get to this stage now where you got married, and so the garden is there, just as God did in the garden with Adam and Eve. The garden is there. So you now have the situation where you have weeds in the garden. Now the size of the garden will determine the method you would use to get the weed out. Now, so the marriage was good because, you know, first few months, few years, everything is good because you were tending, you were paying attention to the garden. If the leaves look withered, you will water them. Then you know as well that you have to put fertilizer to get the best possible fruit. It's the same way when you were taking the wife out to dinner, you're all going out for lunch, you're going on the beach, you're going on a vacation. But when the fruits start to bear in that garden, sometimes we get a little careless because there are no fruits. We don't normally fertilize as much as before. We may not water as much as before. And these are the same issues that are happening in marriages, you know. We are no longer watering the garden. We are no longer pulling out the weeds from around the plants that we want. That is why I say husband or the wife. Things starting to happen. And hear what? We are not taking care of the things that are happening. We are allowing them to bypass. And before you know it, you can't see the plants anymore because it's overshadowed by weeds. And so it's the same thing in the marriage. Every single day as a farmer, you in that marriage, you need to go there and pull out the weeds. You need to look to see when there are pests and insects and apply the pesticides. What do you think could be the pesticides or so that we apply to the pests or the pesticide? Now, if it's a large garden, you may need to get a machine to spray to get rid of the pesticide. Now, in the same way, if you are having big issues in your marriage, you may need to get to a marriage counselor. If the issues are smaller, then you could probably continue to check with your pastor in the church. You may continue to talk to a friend. But if it gets worse, you may need more than the pesticide. You may need to get the machinery. So you may need to go to conferences, go to other things like retreats. These things are things that we need to do to ensure that the plants remain fruitful, that the garden remain clear of weeds. And this, guess what? Guess what? There are sometimes some birds, they would fly and drop some seeds, and you may think it's a good plant, and you start to nurture it, but you don't know that that plant killing your taking the nutrients from the soil. In the same way, you may be going by some people to get advice, and they're giving you the wrong advice. So you have to be very careful of the advice you take and from whom you take the advice. So these things are very, very important. It is important that we go to marital retreats, hang out with friends that are like-minded. Sometimes you may have to put away something because guess what? You may be growing some pimentos up front and then you have some hot peppers to the back, or vice versa. But what you didn't think about is the fact that where the direction the wind is blowing. And if the wind is blowing downstream and the pimentos are to the back of the hot peppers, you know eventually those pimentos will turn hot. Because what is going to happen is called cross-pollination. Because when the pimentos flower, and instead of the honey taking it, the bees taking it to the other thing and pollinate it, it goes to the hot pepper, goes to the pimento pepper. So when you buy pimentos in the grocery, you realize they are hot. That is because cross-pollination took place. So you have to be very, very careful who you allow to speak into your marriage. So we don't talk about, we talk about where was Adam, where was the wedding, we talk about who was the father giver, was the garden always prepared. These are things that we talk about. Why was Adam tending to the garden? We basically talk about that when we said that, you know, you have to be dealing with that to pull out the weeds, to ensure that there is no pest, there is no insect, you know, in the garden. So you have to take care of them, to nurture them and so on. How can you maintain a good produce? Well, first and foremost, you have to think about keeping out the weeds. And keeping out the weeds could be breaking generational curses. You have some issues taking place in your marriage. But when you check, you realize the behavior of whether it's the husband or the wife was in some generations before. Man, there are times you have to get into your house and really rebuke those things. And I could advise you, when you are rebuking these generational curses, as I did in a session recently, it is recommended that you rebuke those things right back to Adam and Eve. Deal with them from the roots, because there are some weeds that will grow up in that garden. Unless you get to the root and pull them out, they will always continue to grow and to prosper, especially if that ground is fertile. And you may never know, you may have a very, very fertile marriage that can help so many other people, but because of those weeds, those generational curses that are embedded, you may have to go to the root. And how do you go to the root? By breaking those generational curses. How do you do it? By making declarations in your house. Guys, listen to this, Abundance family. Here's what I would advise you to do. Write down some of the good things that you had with your husband or your wife when you were courting. This year, you're talking about a garden here, and you're talking about seeds growing in the garden. Think about some of the good seeds that were sown in your marriages. For those of you who are having real trouble in your marriage right now, and all you could see is the negativity because the garden was not being tended to over the years, it is the same way. Because you are no longer doing some of the things that you did when you were courting, when you were recently engaged or got married, it's easy for things to overgrow them because we don't have bills to pay, children to take care of. Go back to some of those things. Write down some of them. Even play in your mind and get back into that place where you can feel the happiness that you felt back then when you were going on all these dates, holding hands, going to the beach, taking these vacations together prior to children or other commitment. Just go back to that place. And when you go back to the place, as I said, write them down. And every single morning, just give thanks. Give thanks to God for those times. Give thanks to God for those things coming back and being part of the marital garden again. Because remember, those are seeds, Those are seeds, so that these fruits can begin to bloom again. These fruits can really begin to bloom again. And so it is so important when they start blooming that you start watering them. Have these declarations, and remember as well, why you having these declarations. Don't do it for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. Remember, sometimes a gestational period of a fruit, depending on the size of the fruit, could take weeks, could take months, could even take years. Let me say that fruit is a mango tree. You don't expect to get mango after one week or 2 weeks. It could be about 3 years. So sometimes you may have to do those declarations for 3 years. Just keep doing them. There is a Chinese proverb that talk about the Chinese bamboo tree. And they spoke about the man who planted the Chinese bamboo tree. And every day he was watering it. And the neighbors were laughing because nothing was happening as far as they could see to the surface. But if you understand how the Chinese bamboo tree grew, it is taking root. So when they thought nothing was happening, every day the Chinese man would go water the Chinese bamboo tree for years. And then whoops, the bamboo tree shoot up. And before you know it, within a short space of time, 15 feet in the air. The question is, did that Chinese bamboo tree take 2 days to get there or 5 years to get there? 5 years when the man was watering the plants. And this is the importance. So sometimes when people see your marriage start blooming, in spite of where you were, they would not recognize the type of work. Now, let me tell you this. Your responsibility is to water the garden by yourself, not to think about what the husband or what the wife doing. That is not your responsibility. That is the responsibility of God. We are creative beings, and what you are doing when you make these declarations is putting that creative word back in your marriage. You are not responsible for changing your wife or your husband. That is the responsibility of Jehovah Jireh. That is the responsibility of God Himself. Your responsibility is to take care of your own arrangement, not being singular in the marriage, but in this instant, in terms of getting it right, is your responsibility, because we know for a fact that whatever we sow, that shall we also reap. So if you continue to sow love in the marriage, sow those beautiful things that have been in the past, notwithstanding what the husband or the wife will do, it will multiply. It is simply called the law of sowing and reaping. Whatever a man sow, that shall he also reap. Now remember this, the Bible also says, what God has put together, let no man put asunder. So the thing can't be so bad that you end up before the divorce court. The divorce court could only come when there are acts of violence, in my humble opinion. But anything, or there is, what do you call it, adultery. And some people still forgive from adultery, but the Bible speaks about that. But what I'm saying to you, outside of that, I call that spiritual amputation, where somebody who has no legal basis to want to interfere with that covenant. Because if you notice quite well, God said it is not good for a man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. I will make a helper who is just right for him. I will make a helper who is comparable for him. So Abundant Seed family, I am so happy that we could have had this discussion today. So you know what I want from you? I want that you would drop me some comments in the comments area. I want that you would share this video as well if it means something to you, if it gave you some benefits in your marriage, and I want you to like the video as well. Let us promote something that is good. You all know, and you look everywhere around, there are so many negatives about marriage. I truly and honestly believe that if we use and take care of the marital garden, there will not be so many divorces. Abundant Seed family, I love you, I love you, I love you. And God bless you, God bless you, God bless you. Till we meet again. Bye-bye.